Welcome, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay? Get a thumbs up from any one person. Cool. I'm going to give us a couple minutes just for people to get in. I would expect that we'll be starting in probably about 30 minutes. Hey, Jason.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I was about to say it's not a meeting until someone says you're on mute.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Yeah, we're gonna start probably about 5 past, just giving people a few minutes
Great.
to kind of get in.
Sounds good.
You're in Texas, right? Texas.
Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm in Boston. I lived in Plano and Irving for about 4 years, but I used to work for BlackBerry.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. That's not too far. I'm in South Lake.
Yeah. So I literally, when I fly in Logan, so in the worst terminal in the world inside of Logan in Boston, they put a payway in there. And there's two
Yeah.
things I truly miss about Texas. That's payway and that's Freebirds. And so I
Okay.
will literally go an hour early to the airport, go through a security line that's at a terminal that is not my terminal, just so I can go eat at Payway before I get on the plane, because that's the only Payway, like, in the north at all.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a good job there.
Yeah, I've always liked their food a lot.
Freebirds is the burrito place, right?
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
Freebirds. It's
Yeah.
great. I always tell people whenever they go down there, go to Freebirds.
Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, my town, we have 19 Mexican restaurants, I think, in this
Oh, I
town.
bet, yeah.
Yeah, I counted them once. It's just they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody loves the Tex-Mex.
Oh, absolutely. I was always amazed by how good the Asian fusion in Texas was, because being, a stupid American, I just assumed it was just Mexican and barbecue everywhere. But I was really impressed by the Asian fusion scene up there, or down there rather.
Right. I'm just getting
Saying,
my demo
yeah, it's
tenant
okay.
set up here.
Oh, you got plenty of time. We're gonna start at 10:05, just giving people a chance to get in. I use 10 a.m. because it's 5 o'clock in Amsterdam. West Coast hates me. It's 7 a.m. But like, I try to find a really good time that's good for everybody.
Cool. Now, what's the schedule like? What's the agenda looking like? Are you going to kick it off with your own stuff?
Yeah. So yeah,
first time?
I'm gonna go a little bit. We'll do intros, and then at one point I'll kick it over to you, like halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, we're just giving it a couple more minutes, just let everybody kind of. I just got back from World of EUC late last night, so my brain is still trying to fix.
Where was that at?
It was in Maryland. So their whole thing was they wanted to do it with the place where the very first Bri forum was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird being in D is a random, like, let's go to DC. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, John Bakud, for getting up nice and early with us. Yeah, we're gonna get started in about a minute. Okay, we kind of gave, we only have about 30% of our signups, but we'll go ahead and get started here. So welcome everybody. I am John Tolles, aka Mobile John. Don't get confused by the slides. This is a session that I did at VMUG in Boston behind Hawktam and various people a few weeks ago, I guess maybe about a month ago now. And there was some issues, they didn't get it recorded. I wanted to bring it back to people because there just was not a lot of EUC at VMUG, and we want to try to get this information and get this out here for all of you. And everyone can see the slides okay? Is that right? Thumbs up, somebody? Yep, great. Cool. So some of the things that you can expect today is we're going to kind of talk a little bit about who I am briefly for those of you who aren't familiar. A lot of my old friends from the VMware and / Omnissa side are here today, which is great. But we'll just kind of cover who I am real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about what is EUC, because it's something that's kind of had some, I guess, let's call it sensitivity about as of late. I'm going to talk about what my 2024 has been like, because it's been a big departure for me professionally. We'll talk about the kind of state of EUC, what's going on, some of the emerging tech that's hitting the scene, and that's why Jason from Island IO was here today. We're going to kind of talk about kind of how it all fits into like your overall strategy and the way that you're going to do things. My favorite question always is talking about also like, is one vendor able to do everything, which is kind of nonsensical, but we'll talk about that. And it wouldn't be me, and it wouldn't be one of these conversations without talking about the recent, let's call it turmoil that's gone on in EUC or in really IT across the board. And then we'll kind of tidy it up with like the future of EUC. We call what I call the decade of possibility, because I swear to God, if I hear the year of VDI one more time, I'm going to probably have a nervous breakdown. So we'll kind of, the thing that just to kind of be very fully aware from the outset is that this is going to feel a lot like shit posting, but it's not. There's a lot of thoughtfulness, strategy, and planning out with everything that you're going to see here today and things we're going to talk about. So who I'm John Tolles. I am a Microsoft MVP in Intune, Windows 365, AVD, Entra, and security. Formerly was the face of WorkspaceONE with VMware and Omnissa for about 10 years. I'll leave that as that. I won't go too much deeper into that. But I've been in EUC for over 15 years, ex-BlackBerry, ex-Freddie Mac. Been around, pretty much worked in a lot of enterprises, walked very closely with a lot of enterprises. And today I now run the MSP practice for modern work practice for a large MSP up here in New England, called WorldCom Exchange, where I'm doing a lot of work to help customers modernize their stacks and what they're doing, taking people who are aren't even either are doing imaging or aren't even doing anything at all, and just trying to help them kind of shift and get ready for Windows 11, which is under a year to go now. Jason, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me on this, John. I'm field CTO at a company called Island, and we're based here in Dallas, Texas. We've really developed something new, something kind of novel when it comes to end user compute, although it's based on something that everybody already knows about, which is Chromium. It's a Chromium-based browser. There's so much you can do in Chromium. All the apps are there now. I'll kind of walk you through. I've got a little demo planned for you. I'll show you kind of what it looks like. But this really has blossomed into this massive company at this point. Not massive, but we're still a startup. But we've taken $500 million to build this thing. We're super excited about it. We've got a lot of traction in the marketplace. Whether it runs inside VDI or whether it starts to slowly kind of move things outside of VDI. It's a platform that can run on mobile and so forth. So anyway, super excited to show it to you, and thanks so much, John, for inviting me on.
Thanks, Jason. And it wouldn't be me, and it wouldn't be a session of mine without introducing my friend Clippy, who we all know and love. Clippy is going to help us with this whole AI thing, so Clippy's here to save us. So let's dig into this a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about what actually is EUC. And so one thing that you're going to expect this session, you're not going to get to a lot of sessions, is I'm pretty much, those of you who don't know me, I'm super ADHD. I basically say whatever is on my head, and it just kind of falls out of my mouth and down the street. And one of the things that's been driving me crazy that I see everywhere I go is that people think that EUC is just VDI. If we take ourselves back a little bit into the past, we just kind of jump in the Wayback Machine. So how we go to all this is like, it's like the 80s. Like he talked about what he defined EUC as like what systems where non-programmers can create apps, which is, that's cool. So then our friends VMware, who, several years down the road would talk about how EUC is like users accessing apps and data anytime, anywhere, and VDI and on-prem, off-prem, blah, blah, blah. Tech Target, who, interestingly enough, I used to write for when Jack Madden was there. They kind of, I think, made it a little more succinct, talking about kind of it's desktop and mobile and identity and security. So I don't look at it from like a tech perspective. So the way I view EUC, the problem is that people in IT are just too goddamn like so we're looking for. They're not, I want to say analytical, but they're just very they just see something as it is, and it's just because the word compute is in there doesn't mean that it's only VDI. It's about the tech itself. It's about the user experience. It's everything that revolves around the user and how they interface with things today. Thanks, Scott. But that's the reality, right? Is that EUC is not just one thing; it's everything. And one of the problems that we have in the EUC space right now, today, actively, and I talked to Carl Webster about this like a year or two ago, is that people are not inclusive. They just, you have like John Cleese and Monty Python in the tower saying, "I shall talk to you a second time." Like it's ridiculous. Like we need to all do better to bring more people into the fold, to bring young people in, because if not, they're all just going to go in InfoSec, and then EUC is going to end up dying out. That's the reality. So EUC, like I said, it's more than just one thing. It's everything. It's, everything everywhere at once. So we'll talk a little bit about my journey real briefly for those who are familiar with me. So our friend in Broadcom said, "Hey, what's up? Sorry." And so one of the things that happened in that is the VMware Partner Program, which those of you who don't know, so VMware Partners, we get certain benefits. And so first thing that really kind of made me had to make some tough decisions is I learned that partner program was no longer going to exist. It was being sunsetted. So the reason that matters is that partners, we get 50% off our licenses for internal use. So that was going to double my cost for our company because my wife and I, we own a pharmaceutical company. And within that pharmaceutical company, like we have also like a VMware Microsoft practice and whatnot. So yeah, that was going to increase our costs exponentially. So we had to figure out what we were going to do because obviously we weren't going to go pay a ton of more money just to be able to do stuff in WorkspaceONE, especially given what we had seen. And so somebody, a partner of mine who's down in South Africa had actually asked for my help in trying to build something to migrate devices from WorkspaceONE to Intune. We had fussed around a little bit, and then towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, I built and I got that tool built, and I got it functional. It is the only thing right now today that exists that will migrate a device from WorkspaceONE to Intune without a device wipe. Microsoft says it's not supported, blah, 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 but like it works well. We're actively right now doing a 50,000 seat migration for a pharmaceutical company in Florida with it. And over that last year or so, we've kind of really dug more into learning kind of the nuantical differences around Intune and how it actually works and how it's functional. And it hasn't been great, right? You have the Microsoft people who think that I'm kind of a basic bitch, to be honest. And like, they think it's so much different than everything else, but the reality is anyone who's in the endpoint scene knows that they're all honestly kind of the same thing. Sure, Brian. So basically, what happens is we have a package we deploy down to a Windows machine, and what that'll actually do is it'll actually migrate and flip the device that's a Windows device enrolled in WorkspaceONE to Intune. Removes it from Entra, rejoins it, enrolls it without any real impact. A couple reboots, but like there's no device wipe. They don't lose their apps. It's a nice solid thing because we had to build something because we had as a company we had 100 people, and so we had to do something. We couldn't just wipe because Microsoft will tell you go wipe 100 devices, which is idiotic. Because like I live in the real world where you can't just go wipe devices lackadaisically. That's just not how it works. And so, like I said, we really had to kind of learn how, because honestly, Intune's not that hard. It's more about trying to learning like kind of the crayons that are in the box because they do things in a very nonsensical way. And it's more about just trying to understanding like how you have to do it, what the guidelines are, and how we go that way. But yeah, I'm sticking around as long as you guys are here. So whatever questions we have, we will cover it. So let's talk a little bit about what the state of EUC is today. And like I said, don't worry about interrupting me and stuff like that. I am the worst. I've been kicked out of multiple conferences because I don't stop talking and I ask questions and I can't keep my mouth shut. So I'm not a hypocrite. So I'm very open to whatever people have for questions and thoughts. So if we talk a little bit about the state of EUC today, and we'll just get a little poll started because why not? Fun. We're gonna put up a little poll here on what you're using for endpoint management today. So I'm just gonna close that down. So if we talk about kind of what the state of EUC is at and where it's at today. So one thing I learned I never knew, and almost nobody probably knew this, is that if a company takes enough of the Magic Quadrant and Gartner's, and think what you want. I mean, I know a Gartner's Magic Quadrant is basically like my friend having an opinion on my girlfriend. It's, it's not really fundamentally factual. It's a source. It's okay. So I never knew that if you take over enough of the quadrant, they actually shut the quadrant down. That's the thing I learned this year. Dan, I forget his last name, but Dan, who works for Gartner's, who's a good friend of mine, he used to run the UEM quadrant, and I was talking to him a little bit. He now runs the DEX quadrant. He was telling me that if someone takes enough of the market, it actually gets shut down. And from what I understand, DAS is going to get shut down next year because Microsoft has taken so much of that, like right or wrong. I mean, it's a little unfair because they get both Windows 365 and AVD, so they kind of double dip a little bit. So Intune has kind of overtaken the majority of the market. So that really matters because the reality is it's free if you have a certain license, right? M365, E3, the E5 licenses. But like if you have one of those licenses and you're free and you're on it, I'm sorry, Omnissa, Ninja One, whoever, they ain't moving. Free is free, and you want to migrate off plus pay money? That's just not reality. I mean, net new is a different situation, but yeah, I mean, if you're already there, it's incredibly unlikely that anything is changing there. We've also can see like DAS and VDI converge and expectations are kind of realigning. Like it's so confusing because I remember like, I don't know, like 5-10 years ago, it was like PC as a service was like Dell like leasing and they had DAS and it's like, what the hell is the difference? I mean, who really cares? But I think more and more, we're just kind of starting to see the same thing they have the same goal, right? Like we want to kind of shift the compute, so they can say they want to go out and buy a Chromebook or buy whatever. They can kind of go install whatever app and then kind of get into their environment. So we're starting to see that converge more since COVID. It's become way more important. You've had companies that are building businesses on it like Nerdio, and like obviously Azure Virtual Desktop has like completely, assaulted the marketplace with like 50, from what I hear, like 50% of people right now are using ABD, like in most polls and stuff like that. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, but I mean, it matters, right? The way that things are going. DEX is becoming probably the most important, most influential product that's on the market right now. Sorry, AI. The problem is a lot of people aren't buying it. They haven't invested, they haven't budgeted for it yet, but it is incredibly influential, incredibly important. Don't anybody at Microsoft tell you that what they do is DEX, because it isn't. Like, I mean, there's a lot of good platforms out there. Nextthing, Control Up, even Horizon Deem is okay. It's still got some major gaps, but but having a DEX platform is probably the most important investment you can make in EUC right now today, hands down. And the problem is it's still kind of expensive. I met recently with the leadership of Control Up and talking to them about that is that they really need to get that down to like $20 a user. It's a little higher than that. If they can get there, I think that'll make a really big impact. But the tangible impact of DEX right now is exponential, and just what you can do in proactive remediation and kind of where you're going, and not to mention that, but Windows 11 readiness. There's a lot of things that you really buy yourself with DEX. And okay, raise your hand if you're exhausted of AI. Are you tired of hearing about it? I'm tired of hearing about it. We have a generative AI product, and I'm tired of it. It's incredibly exhausting. We hear AI like all the time. I've had to sit through Brian Madden's session twice in a month about AI, and it's cool, right? AI, whatever. I mean, but like it's honestly, it's kind of exhausting. I mean, yeah, it's not going to take your job, at least not yet. But like it's useful, right? It's going to have its uses. But I mean, companies that are trying to hold people ransom and charge them, like, for example, like Microsoft's trying to charge people like for like 6 queries, you get charged like $40 and like their Intune Copilot and stuff like that. Like that's just not a good fit. I mean, AI it's okay. I mean, we've been doing AI for 15 years, right? It's just a different name now. It's just, we've got, LLMs and stuff like that. But like we've been doing all those like, creative coding I mean, and it's evolved and it's continuing to evolve, but I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of exhausting. And it's like, you can't just yell AI from the stratosphere and think that that magically it's gonna solve all your problems. So with that, we're gonna kind of talk about some of the emerging tech that's been hitting this scene. So let's talk about VR. So 3-4 years ago, me and Johan van Amersfoort did this absolutely amazing COVID VMworld session that if it had been in person would have been one of the greatest sessions of all time. And in that he enrolled a device and he basically played Rogue Squadron while I did a bunch of onboarding stuff. Yeah, that's literally what happened. But it was a really cool demo because you could see WorkspaceONE enrolled, launching Horizon. It was a phenomenal demo. WorkspaceONE by far and away still is the best management for VR. I mean, basically Microsoft is only doing their silly thing, but like WorkspaceONE has done a good job of diversifying across this. I mean, honestly, they're very niche. Anyone who tells you differently, I mean, I don't think they really live in the real world with us humans, but like, it's still niche, right? If they had released a Vision Pro for 2K versus 4K, I think that it would crush. But it's too damn expensive. The support's still not really quite there. I tried this during COVID. I tried buying some Oculuses, but the Teams app was a complete unmitigated garbage, trash, dumpster fire. Like it was because I was like, oh, people are feeling isolated. Let's get them Oculuses. Let's, avatars, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just not there. I mean, there's some really good novelty cases that we have seen. So training has been a big one. I mean, the virtual meeting stuff, like I said, is really good fundamentally as an idea, but the tech is just not really caught up yet. We're seeing a lot of it in manufacturing, especially in life sciences. I've got a few customers who are using it actively with that today, along with drug engineering. So, I mean, there are certainly use cases for it, but there's a lot of stuff you have to do. You got to develop it. You have to, you're basically building apps and you're building and kind of cultivating that whole thing. But I mean, it's not really a good investment, I don't think, at this point for most people. And I mean, has anyone seen one of these guys at the airport? I saw one and I was like, what the shit? Like, it's ridiculous. So AI. So, all these AI tools we kind of are becoming exhausting, right? ChatGPT. 8,500,000 different versions of Copilot. Like there are so many Copilots, it's ridiculous. I'm an MVP and I can't even name all of them probably correctly. And they keep changing. And it's ridiculous. Like some of the stuff, like last year I worked at Ignite and I was at the MVP summit before Ignite. And this woman who I think was from like Avanade or something, she basically said that Copilot fixes ADHD, which it took everything in me to not flip the table over and walk out. Like, it's just like, no. So you have chatbots. I mean, those have been around for a while. I did stuff with the IBM Watson at WorkspaceONE with the virtual assistant. I mean, chatbots have been a thing that are for a while, and we're seeing a lot of those now. And we're going to start seeing smart, intelligent AI agents and bots really, really soon. They're coming incredibly quickly. I believe they even just somebody this week actually released some stuff about now having like AI bots that can actually do human tasks. Like they can download files on your machine and stuff like that, which is kind of terrifying, but that got announced this week. Then obviously we have generative AI. WorkspaceONE, for example, is doing it in pilot. Intune is doing it. Intune's been doing it for a little bit. I mean, generative AI is really important. So I mean, I think so. We at our company, we give everybody ChatGPT, and we mainly use it for like helping to just work out logics and scripts stuff. That just kind of major time suck. Hallucinations are also a thing. If you're not familiar, hallucinations are basically the idea that like you didn't train a model well enough, and it's very prejudiced. It's working off not enough sources of data, not enough of a web of things. So it's more focused on what lies, unfortunately. And yeah, everyone's doing it. Salesforce is doing it, and Microsoft, VMware, and like literally every single damn person is basically saying AI. And yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I want to go back to the days of Clippy where he's just like, "Hey, do you need help with Word?" I mean, that would be great, but think that's kind of out the door. So something that's not really future state, but something to kind of think about and start considering is that even though it's not new, what we're starting to see a lot of, and it's kind of a bad thing really, is that you're seeing a lot of people who are endpoint management or VDI or whatever who are now managing identity. And part of it is that like most people are now using Entra. I don't know that I believe the numbers, but I've been told by PMs at Entra that it's like 80% of all Federation and Office 365 is being done by Entra. I'm not sure I buy it. I have a lot of Okta customers, but you are starting to see a lot of the same people managing both things. And guess what? Not great. That is, there's so many problems you see people locking themselves out of conditional access and Entra and all these because they just don't have the skills to do it. I mean, it's a great thing to pick up because I can say for myself, when Airwatch bought VMware, it was like 2016, 2017, and I spoke at VMworld, I think that was 2018, and I did a whole session on VMware Identity Manager. It was great because I went from that friggin' guy that just activates my iPhone to, oh, he can do a little bit of security now. And it's like, it's a really good thing to pick up, but a lot of people don't really have the proper tools to be successful there. And that is kind of a challenge, that we deal with quite a bit. And at the end of the day, right, there are new skills that you need to be successful. It's about understanding how to, reading XML and configuration and stuff like that. And a lot of people who have Okta and stuff, they're kind of spoiled because it's just like, hey, catalog, click a button, okay, it's done. Whereas a lot of us who've had to use either more complicated products like WorkspaceONE Access or even Entra to a degree because they don't have as much of a catalog as Okta has, is you have to kind of try to figure stuff out, which is kind of a fun thing, but it can be a lot. Yeah, that's me. Like it's just putting people in positions to fail is not really my thing, but it's kind of the world that we're in, is that people have to do more or less. IT budgets are being cut and slashed, and this is kind of what we deal with. So like really people need help and support. And I spent a lot of time writing a lot of content around like comparing Okta and Entra, teach people about conditional access stuff, because like these are skills they just don't have, and it's not their fault. It's just literally the world we're in right now. So I added this slide for a friend of mine who works for WWT, who, it was just with some conversations we've had, talking a little bit about VDI ambulance chasers. So like, the reality is that the whole VDI space is kind of a dumpster fire right now. So I worked the AVD Windows 365 boot at Ignite last year. Those of you who aren't aware, it's really cool. At Ignite, MVPs get to work to meet the expert boots, which is the best thing ever. And I wish Citrix had done it, and I wish VMware that none of them really do it. And this is a really cool thing. And pretty much everybody I saw was a Citrix customer going to AVD. One Horizon customer, but for the most part, all Citrix. And like I said, people are trying to jump on that whole nightmare, because like you're hearing people right now like that are like saying like they're getting like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 10x renewals from Citrix, which is we'll call it the Broadcom card. And you have a lot of this stuff going on, and people are trying to take advantage of that. Enterprise browsers is one of those examples. They think they can replace VDI. I have a bit of a differing opinion on that. You also have some of the smaller niche VDI products, which some people like, like WorkspaceONE and stuff like that. I guess Chasm, and so there are some of those products hitting the screen. Said Chasm. Even some people think EDR. And when I say all this, I'm saying is that people think that, oh, we're just going to replace your VPN or VDI solution. You'll just use EDR to go hit everything over the internet. Like it's just kind of funny. It's like just understanding like what the actual point is of the technology that you're using, instead of just trying to take like a circle and shove it into a square hole. Like, yeah, it might work, but it's probably not what you want to do. And at the end of the day, it's about understanding your use cases, understanding what people actually need and where the value is. And if you understand what people actually need, you can actually build the right solution for the right problem. Where we see a lot is that people are just trying to kind of like, I don't know, almost manipulate people into doing what they want them to do. Whereas, it's more about what's good for your customers, not necessarily what's good for you or for anybody else. And we see this all the time, right? Where people are trying to force people to get off a hybrid and go cloud native and blah, blah, blah. And I'm probably like one of three people defending the wall on Entra hybrid. But I mean, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And I mean, it's just about just don't be shitty and be a good human. So enterprise browsers, we're going to talk about briefly here, and then I'm going to pass over to Jason for a few minutes. So WTF. So everyone has a different idea about where they actually are, right? So people see Edge and Chrome, thinking that's enterprise browser, or maybe you're a Citrix or a VMware from this whoever customer, and you think that like WorkspaceONE Web or these like VPN-backed browsers were kind of enterprise browsers. It's more of a new reforming concept. And so a lot of use cases I see are like, contractors, international, a lot of M&A. they're very strong, compliant, and GDPR friendly. It's kind of like, so say like you have like an enterprise, like you have like a, say Edge went and had a baby with like Prisma Cloud, and then Symantec came in to be the nanny. It's like all these different things together. The best analogy I can come up with is I'm sitting at home playing video games. I don't pay attention. My wife goes out shopping. She brings home a 10-foot tall Benny statue, and I'm like, what the shit am I going to do with this? And that's how I view enterprise browsers. And you'll see in the demo, it is cool as shit. But you're still trying to figure out as a person, as a company, what you actually want to do with it. And I think that that's the beauty of it, is that it's really cool and it's really interesting tech, but it's more about like, what am I actually going to do with it? Like, how am I going to use it? And I think that we're going to start learning about that more and more, like what actually makes sense. And, some of the stuff you get out of it is like, you can do like redaction, you can block screenshots and block enforce copy and paste rules and stuff like that. And, it helps isolate kind of the application from the rest of your core operating system to try to help, with just kind of securing the edge, which is really hard and really important. And then to keep in mind too, is also fully accessible from anywhere on any device. So you can it's like a BYOD enrollment. You can do it on your laptop. You can do it inside of a VDI. You could do it, on an Android device, on an iOS device. The other thing I did like a lot about it was the fact I could SSH with it, which sometimes is really useful, especially in the VMware world when you have to go SSH to some like silly box. It does kind of give you some nice flexibility when you need to kind of work from anywhere, which is, kind of the goal of EUC. But why? Jason is going to tell us why. So Jason, feel free to share.
All right. Yeah, good session so far. I like it. I especially like the part where you were talking about the Gartner Magic Quadrant, because you're right. When somebody gets like way too high into the right, if you're the only one there, they just don't do a category on you. It also works the other way. If you're the only one in the space, kind of like we are, you don't get a quadrant immediately either. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Let me share something. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be good. See if it'll let you. If not, I'll stop.
Just a couple quick slides. I don't want to go through the whole thing, obviously, but the way we see it is that most of the stuff you're doing is in the web today. Now, some stuff isn't, right? I was using Citrix WinFrame back, I think, in '99 or something like that. And I installed plenty of MetaFrame XPs in my day and everything else. But the reality is today, the most popular application to put through VDI is a browser. And it's something that's built for consumers, doesn't have support. You don't call Microsoft for support. You don't call Google for support. Yet it's critical to your business. It's just something you didn't realize was so critical to the business. And it is built for consumers. And when we do bring it into the environment, not just surrounding it with different kinds of tech stack, but, putting all of this inside of EDI too is sometimes necessary. So you think about it from a data loss prevention standpoint, you have zero control over what gets displayed in the browser. It's all up to what the server sends to the browser today. And that represents a risk just in itself, right? So if you have sensitive data in Salesforce or Office or somewhere else, doesn't matter if you present it through VDI, doesn't matter if you present it locally native, it doesn't matter. The browser is just going to give you that data right to your eyeballs. You don't have any control over that. So with an enterprise browser, you have control over the presentation layer. You can spot sensitive data fields, data types. You might mask them out. You might drop them. And in a data loss prevention strategy, if there's no data there to lose, there's no loss to prevent, right? So that's kind of that first step. You get control over the presentation layer. And the other thing we built in is the networking component. So instead of doing these crazy things that aren't going to last too much longer, like break and inspect, if you guys are network guys, you know what that is. ZTNA, networks do this. CASBs, SASEs, big vendors like Zscaler and Palo and others. They're taking your whole operating system at the network stack and then moving that to one of their clouds and then trying to break it open and inspect it all in real time, while you're surfing the web, right? Which adds about 100 milliseconds of latency back and forth. And it's something that TLS 1.3, perfect forward secrecy, the quick protocol, quantum, if it ever happens, all that's just going to render it useless. So we have all these tools kind of surrounding the browser today. Obviously our EDR, XDR, CASB, SASEs, all this stuff. And then you even put those tools inside of a VDI environment. So they're all like tucked in, another agent here, another agent there, an agent to capture your screen, an agent to, anything else. So we've built all of this into Island, and we built it on Chromium. And we've basically taken, the best parts of Chromium, the rendering, all the good stuff, the look and feel, looks like a browser, feels like a browser. But it doesn't have any calls back to Google, no calls back to Microsoft. So it's extremely private. And we had to harden it. So we had to make this thing work outside of a protected environment. So when we take this outside of EDI to support, a contractor, for instance, or to support a work from home or BYO, this thing has to be bulletproof. You can't, we can't let you go in and steal session tokens anymore. We can't let you steal your intra ID token and then take that somewhere else. So we have to encrypt those differently, treat them differently. We have to encrypt the memory space. If you've ever saved a password in Chrome, it's just sitting there on your C drive. It's basically unencrypted. All these info stealers can grab it. So what we've done is we've also bolted in, all of these enterprise grade requirements, built it really from the ground up. We tied it to your SSO. So you have to use Intra or Ping or Okta or whatever to get into Island, so we know who you are. And then from there, you might have an audit policy assigned to it. You're talking about conditional access and locking yourself out. That's one of the ways that we can actually lock out other browsers, right? We use conditional access, or in Okta, a sign-on policy in Okta Classic, or OIE, an Okta authentication policy, or Ping Fed. We got all kinds of ways. But what that means is you're able to create a closed loop system for the first time ever to your SaaS applications. I mean, you could mandate that they must use Island to get to the Office suite, the productivity suite, all those apps and so forth. And then from there, you get all the policy and everything enforced locally. So this is a locally running browser. And this is really a good thing for folks like BYO, where they don't want to put a Zscaler agent on their endpoint. They don't want to put a certificate into their OS store just for the purposes of breaking open all of your SSL. I'm not comfortable with that. However, if we can do that in a browser that's dedicated for work, and when you're done with that, you go back to Chrome and Edge and do your shopping, that's the goal, is to create, this end user compute environment. I want to show you this slide real quick. This just represents all of the things we've built into it. I want to stress that we've taken a lot of money to build this. We have over 330 employees. We have more developers on this one product than Microsoft has on all of the Edge browser, more than Google has on the entire Chrome team. So you're going to get real support. We've actually built a global network that you can use to do those conditional access things. So when we hit login.microsoftonline.com, that's the only URL. Actually, there's 3 URLs, but that's one of 3 URLs that Microsoft uses for all of their conditional access, period, including their continuous access authentication. And so all of those, anytime you see one of those URLs, we might redirect that through our global network so that you can do your conditional access to make sure it's coming from the trusted Island browser, because only this browser can use that network, and that's kind of the main difference there. So it kind of becomes this secured closed loop workspace where you get access to all of your apps, also internal apps. We also have a private access connector where you get access to internal apps within the organization. Let me stop sharing this, and I want to bring on my desktop real quick, just kind of give you a feel for what it looks like. Couple things here. We've got, full management console, as you guys might surmise. It's fully API based. We are, quite mature at this point. We integrate with all the different IDPs out there. We integrate with all the SIMs. You can use your own storage. There's role-based access control in the console. But what you end up doing is you end up creating rules for your applications. So you might have a rule for, let's say, Salesforce. And just like a firewall rule, you have source and destination, but the source is always being evaluated. So because we have the SCIM integration with your IDP, we're going to get all the groups and users, always kept current. So you can create a group identity in Island that's very specific to a set of users. You can also check their device. Because we're a browser running on the machine, why not take a look at the machine? Are they running CrowdStrike? If they are, great. What's the CrowdStrike score? Do they have anything running? Do they have, the firewall turned on? What's the CPU model? What's the latest patch level? All these things. This would just be another agent that you'd have to buy to do, device posture inspection. But now we can tie it to a rule, and we're checking every 60 seconds. And unlike, most of the other solutions, we're not just checking at the time of authentication, we're checking all the time. So if they're in the middle of a Salesforce session or, Office 365 or something, and they decide to turn off Windows Defender, well, we're going to see that. We're going to notice that. And we may put a big watermark on their screen and say, hey, go turn that back on. We may not let them download anymore. We may turn off some functionality on the application that they otherwise would have. We come, out of the box with like 35,000 different applications. We know all the URLs for them. We keep those current. You add your own URLs too for your internal apps. But then you decide, what happens. Do you even allow access to that, right? So In a fully managed environment, you may have Island as the only browser to get to these applications. And if we want to block them, we can block them. We can send them. We can route them for approval. We can send them through, a DLP scan. We actually have built in our own DLP engine into the browser. We actually integrate with MIP, AIP, MPIP, whatever it's called these days, with your Azure information protection for sensitivity labels, those types of things. We also allow you to do some really cool things that have never been done before, like last mile control. So, and what I mean never been done before, things like a cut, copy, paste buffer. So, usually in VDI, you can do things like turn off cut, copy, paste. Well, nobody wants to do that. Like, people need to work, right? Unless you're trying to take it out of the VDI. But even within the VDI, you can move data around places you probably shouldn't. So now we allow you to create these zones where you can allow cut, copy, paste, but it has to stay either inside the browser or inside, the app that you're in, or within this set of applications, right? So now this cut, copy, paste buffer stays, very flexible. You can't take it out of the browser. You can do watermarking, which is key for things like data loss. If somebody's taking a picture of the screen, and that's, by the way, I deal with a lot of the big banks, and the big banks are huge VDI shops, as you guys know. The biggest bank in America, the global CIO wants to get rid of all of VDI. In the next 5 years, they want to get 100% off of Citrix. Okay, that's 300,000 users. Today, they have a thin client operating system called Elux that basically just is a thin Linux client, runs in their carpeted spaces, launches the Citrix client. In the near future, and we're already doing it today, but in the near future, that's going to mean that they're just going to boot directly into Island. And so, the user experience is going to be, browser based, or in the case of kind of a desktop workspace view like this. So this is a Windows VM that I've got running here. So if somebody goes to a carpeted space and logs back into their little session, they would usually get a persistent VDI session, right? They would get all their apps right the way they were. Everything's back to normal. The browser can do the same thing. If they log back in, we can restore the session and get them back to all the apps they had open. Here's the teams they had open. I might have had Salesforce up over here in this window. I might have these other apps. But anyway, so it's a nice seamless experience to get them back in the way that they were. Plus, from I'll show it to you on my Mac as well. So plus from just a usability perspective, the number one complaint is, what about my thick apps? I got to have my Outlook, got to have my Teams, right? Well, maybe you can use the PWA version like this. Maybe we can get you off of the E5, E3 license down to an F3 license. That's a massive cost savings. We're taking you out of Citrix, but yet we're giving you this completely fully protected environment. And just to show you, I can't get to these apps with any other browser. Just real quick, if I open up Microsoft Edge here on my Mac, let's let this thing launch real quick. Here we go. And I try to go to outlook.office.com. This is my personal computer. This is my, I've got full administrative rights on this thing. I get logged in, 67 yes, Face ID, and conditional access says no, because again, we're not coming in from that proper Island network. So we can either send them to go download it, or we can bump them over to it if it's already launched. But notice I can get to that account just fine right here within Island. But I have all the protections. Notice the watermark I have going on here. Notice, if I go to an application that's protected, by the way, we can do things like password sharing. We've got, keylogger prevention. Here's that Salesforce that I pulled up. Notice there's a whole section of data that's like FBI redacted. Why did that happen? Well, that's because there's actual sensitive data inside there that I didn't want to reveal right away. So now I've got that capability, right? I've got the capability to prevent the screen from being captured, or saving a page in the HTML. Maybe I want to stop that. So the point is to keep the data in the cloud where I want the data to stay, but yet still give the user the great user experience to get back in, even if they're administrator. Maybe they need to go to an RDP server. So you click on RDP, we insert the credentials for you, you get logged in. We put the RDP session right inside of the secured space. We might watermark that as well, but every click, every keystroke that we're doing fully logged, fully audited. I can also have these apps streamed if I wanted to. If I wanted to stream it through AVD, great. This may be my only way to get thick client Excel streamed down to me. So yes, maybe we keep a little VDI in place. I mean, maybe we're not going to get rid of all of it. But for those, 5%, 10% maybe of the applications that are thick client, you just stream them, but you stream it in the browser client. So you're not worried about, Citrix ICA and the Workspace agent and all that other stuff. the token that leaves the browser and goes to the ICA. All that stuff's out of it. You just keep it in the browser and you keep it secure, and it's fully audited with all the controls that we have. Or, if you wanted to, you could, slowly move them off of those thick applications, bring them into, the PWA world, and start to launch Excel as a PWA. And now you've got the control over those sensitive data elements. Look at all these fields that were hidden. Well, that's because I actually have a rule over here in my management console that actually hides all that data. So for instance, if I turned off those restrictions and pushed out that change, I'm going to go back here and let that policy refresh, and you're going to see the same file. Notice the editing button. I can't open in the thick client Excel. I don't have a share button on here anymore. I've got control over the screen. But now if I took the policy off of it, now it looks just like normal. I've got my share button. I've got my open in desktop button. I see all that sensitive data. So you're going to get massive, massive control over all these data types and present it in a new way to the user that's familiar to them, which is a browser. Anyway, lots more that we have. I wanted to keep this short, but we can do SMB file shares. We have a full-featured password manager built into the browser. This blows the doors off of LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, all the other extension-based plugins which work with consumer-grade browsers, but not very well. We actually are directly embedded into the browser with a zero-knowledge architecture. So I've got a blog on the Island website that talks about that if you're interested in that. Yeah, we do have the SSH client that you mentioned, John. Very nice to have this built in. We take a video recording of everything that happens inside of the SSH session. So that's a full video recording. I think I've got yeah, here we go. Yeah, so all of this is just accessible right here. Of course, you can get your all your cloud consoles. You might even do the Visual Studio Code. You might do VS Code with the PWA. After all, it is an Electron app, which means it was written in Chromium, right? So you could have VS Code right here. But the minute I log out of this browser, everything goes away. I'm going to leave these sites. Everything closes down, and I'm back to my login page. And so we can support multiple users, multiple logins, multiple companies. All with their own separate secured spaces. Anyway, I'd love to give a full demo. This demo usually takes about an hour just to go through all the different features, but it is a space where we're seeing massive traction for folks that want to start reducing a little bit of VDI. Hey, you're welcome to use this inside VDI too. It's just a better browser. It's a better, safer browser. We do some things with browser isolation. We turn off WebAssembly and just-in-time compiler and some other stuff. And phishing attacks, those happen in a browser. They don't happen in email, but everybody buys email stuff to fix that. So we're really changing the game in a lot of ways, and it's a message that resonates with the CIO and the CISO very well. So thanks again, John, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And just to be clear, taking a Post-it note and sticking it on my computer is better than using LastPass. So maybe don't use LastPass as a gold standard for security. But yeah, no, and I put in the chat, what I loved most by far about Island is the fact you have to actually click a commit change button. Because it's something I give SaaS vendors shit for all the time, is they don't do enough to actually protect the administrators. Like, they really don't. And so I love the fact, and I would love to see more people actually implement just the fact you have to commit changes, which is really great. But yeah, so moving on. Glad everybody mostly is still with us. So we're going to talk a little bit about Cloud PKI. This is something that I am very passionate about and that very few people do. And if more people did it, they would actually reduce their attack surface exponentially. So if you really wanted to help, eliminate a number of attacks, one of the things you do is you have your internal PKI you use for your servers and domain controllers, blah, blah. And what I strongly recommend is implementing something like Skepman, or even if you don't want to have to manage the app service, Microsoft's Cloud PKI solution. Because essentially what you get out of it is that you completely have separated your certificates from your internal and your external. So this really helps with people trying to use certificates off a device to kind of do privilege escalation up to domain admin. And it's like I said, it's so easy to implement. It really is nothing. It takes 4 hours to do Skepman. Cloud PKA, it takes an hour to actually do, if that. And like I said, it's a really great thing, and not enough people are doing it. And the cost is really not as crazy as you would think. And like I said, Cloud PKA is something I'm very passionate about, and I try to get all my customers to do it because, like I said, I worked 2 years ago. There was a chain of automobile dealership in Florida who got ransomware because they got their wireless network owned. And it's like stuff like this, right? If you just kind of put a little more time and effort in, you eliminate a lot of those kinds of issues. And it's just it's like I said, it's incredibly important. So now we're going to talk a little bit about EPM really quickly. So endpoint privilege management, which not a lot of people are doing. Some people are. I don't know if anyone is doing like Beyond Trust or anything like that. But we have a couple of big players in the space. Beyond Trust is one of them. CyberArk has a really good EPM that has ransomware protection that I rolled out, I think at Freddie Mac for Macs and for PC. Really just for Macs, I guess. But they support both Mac and PC. Now Microsoft EPM, which is part of, the Intune suite, which is $10 a month per user. All of these, basically, you get rid of local admin, you build policies, and those policies will actually allow you to allow people to say elevate as something. It's back in the day, remember, you had that share where you'd basically be able to install apps as elevated. So EPM, like I said, is becoming very popular, and the problem is it's administrative work. It does create a bit of administrative overhead, and like I said, there's still a cost behind it, but it's something that it just really kind of depends on what your strategy is. Some people just say go YOLO and just give everybody local admin, which we find more and more is a problem. We're seeing a lot of people more and more now starting to do stuff like app locker and stuff like that to really control and secure where people can elevate and execute, and that honestly has really become a big thing. So let's talk a little about Windows 365. So if you are a regular VDI customer and you are sensitive about your VDI and your DAS, you just want to maybe just close your computer for a few minutes. So here's the reality. Microsoft released this 3 years ago, and people have realized this is what they actually want. So this is essentially what happened. Instead of being like a true VDI solution, it's basically like a PC in the cloud. It's like it's like literally running like a PC out of the box that's in the cloud. So this is the model that everyone needs to be on. And I'm just going to flat out tell you, I met this week with CTO of Citrix, and I've been talking with product leadership at VMware, trying to push them on this. I worked at BlackBerry. I went through the whole Apple consumerization bullshit. I know what it looks like when another one of those is coming, because Android did it to Apple to a degree. And when you get complacent and you don't realize the way the market is going and what you actually need to do to be successful, you think that you're just going to hang on the fact that, oh, I'm Citrix or I'm VMware or I'm whoever. That's when you start losing, and that's when you kind of essentially end up pulling a BlackBerry like BlackBerry did. The funny thing about that is, those you aren't aware, the real reason that the BlackBerry crash happened is that Netflix came out. And I know this because I worked in the support of DISA, Boeing, Bank of America, everybody. And friggin' Netflix came out, and every CIO was pissed because they could not run Netflix on their BlackBerry. I'm not bullshit. Like, I would literally be on calls with like senior leadership at like DISA, and I'd be literally fielding calls from like some senior director saying, why can't I get Netflix on my BlackBerry? So like literally that was like the thing that started that whole revolution, which is hilarious. But I mean, this is really no different, right? Is the fact that with Windows 365, in under 40 minutes, I can go from license to inside of a cloud PC, fully deployed with an optimized image and everything, is phenomenal. And more than anything, you don't need some VCDX or CTP or whoever that's going to wave his magic wand and make VDI happen. You can now, as anybody, can make VDI happen. And I'm big on exclusivity. I want everyone to be able to do everything and to be able to use tech the way they want to use it. And Windows 365 is the future. And I know for a fact Citrix has actually had conversations about doing one of these. VMware, I don't know. I'm having active conversations with them. Believe it or not, yes, people at Omnissa do still talk to me, for those of you who know me. But yeah, I'm actually having active conversations about this because it's incredibly important that they understand and they get the fact that if they do not release a platform like this in the next 3 years, then they're gonna live to regret it, period. Because this is what people want now. Everyone wants it. Everyone wants the features. Yeah, I know the features were invented by Citrix like 10 years ago, but like the fact that you can boot directly into your cloud PC, the fact that you can switch like literally alt tab between cloud PC and everything else, these things are incredibly, incredibly huge. And It's what people actually care about, what people like. And it's just the reality. Sorry, every, VDI engineer and admin and whoever, but this is the future. This is what people are looking for. I'm going to go back to the demo. I have a demo here that's basically about 8 minutes, and it will show you, because we just did a long demo, so I'm going to go back to it. But this demo literally shows you time lapse from start to finish how I can get into a window. I can license and be in Windows 365 in under 40 minutes. So I will go back to that, and we're going to kind of move forward. So let's talk more about digital employee experience. I talked about that a little while ago. So, like I said, this is the most bang for your buck thing that you're going to find, period, in EUC. I remember back in, the 2015, 2016 time period, you'd go to a conference and there'd be like 50 EUC vendors. Now, anyone who's gone to a VMware conference or any conference, there's like 10 if you're lucky. So there's not a lot of opportunity, because unfortunately people like Microsoft have cornered the market, and there's just not a lot of opportunity to kind of innovate and do things that are special. So basically, DEX, what it does is it has an agent that's on the device, and depending on the platform, it also uses APIs to collect client device information. And so what it does is it will look at the performance of a device, it assigns user experience scores, and it can run automations automatically. So like as an example, if it sees that, Teams is taking up a lot of CPU, I know, big surprise. It can clear the cache, for example, or if it's seen Outlook crash 3 times, it can handle that. My favorite new thing they can do now is if you blue screen a death, it will not just capture the blue screen error code, it will actually upload the dump to the platform. This is with Control Up, which is phenomenal, because you can literally go there, just grab the dump and go, because that's one of the biggest problems we dealt with for these blue screens we saw recently, right, is that you couldn't really help and support. But I mean, Chad, I don't know if it's for me, it's cost. I don't think operationalizing is hard. It's actually being able to demonstrate, to number one, buy it, and number two, be able to demonstrate the value enough that people are going to let you buy it. And this is why I've met with Jed and Simon at Control Up, and I'm really trying to get them to get the cost down, because I think that it is very foundational, but they need to understand the price is the price, not the price that is currently the price. It's kind of like how people bought BombGar for remote support, and you basically buy 5 concurrent licenses or 5 concurrent technician licenses. But like if you go do remote support for like Microsoft or VMware, they charge you per device, which is absolutely asinine. Or I can spend like $2K a year and get full support BombGar versus $100K with WorkspaceONE Assist or with remote help with Microsoft. It's just not understanding. Those 2 there are the tops in the field right now, Control Up and NextThink. Like I said, the investment is consistent, no question. But once you get in there and you bring it, you see how much that value is. If you do have WorkspaceONE Enterprise, it does come with DEX built in. But the main problem that we have with WorkspaceONE with this, and I had conversations yesterday with VMware people about this, is the fact, and so at Freddie Mac, we were like the first person to do WorkspaceONE Deem with Horizon. And the reason it died on the vine is that they do not license the the monitoring for your Horizon hosts. This is just logic. If you want to displace your competitors, build a competing product that can actually compete. It was cheaper for us to keep Control Up just from monitoring Horizon, which is, ridiculous. And there's our magic quadrant, like we were saying, NextThink, Control Up, yada, yada. And I mean, that's the thing, is that vendors need to understand fundamentally who they're competing with and meet parity. If you do not meet friggin' parity, you will not beat your competitors. And they're all bad at it. I fought with Cisco for years trying to get them to get OneDrive integration. They never did, and they got crushed by Slack and Teams. And it's the same deal. Like, you need to actually meet parity, understand what people want, and deliver it. Just that simple. So, can one vendor rule them all? And when I say this, I talk about Microsoft, right? No. No matter what anybody tells you, they're not all good at everything. Like, this is the literal reason why you're going to have 3 or 4 people at Ignite that are going to announce that they're going to do app packaging for Intune. Intune also doesn't do DEX. There's a lot of things they don't do. Every single vendor, it's all about understanding, like, what are its gaps? Are its gaps your gaps? And then filling those with partners. Because you know what? We're all in it together. When a friend needs help, you help them. So sometimes we need a little bit of help with whatever that happens to be. But it's not about just saying, okay, we need to get the whole Microsoft stack there, right? I mean, we should be, but we're not seeing everybody just go to dump CrowdStrike and go to Defender, because they still like CrowdStrike, regardless of, crowd-strikiness. But there's no one vendor for everything. That's the reality of the world that we live in. Okay, again, disclaimer. If you are sensitive to what's going on in IT right now, you may want to go take a break, because I'm going to be very, very honest with all this, and not everyone's going to like it. So let's talk about the turmoil, because it's a lot. So let's talk about the Magic Quadrant. So I come from a UEM background, so this is something that I know quite well. My friend Shad here knows quite well. This was the Magic Quadrant for mobility in 2019. You can't see it great, but VMware is here, Microsoft is there, there's BlackBerry, Mobile Iron, blah, blah, blah. Yes, BlackBerry, they were a thing. They existed. Fun fact. Here's 2020. Look at Microsoft. Look at VMware. Kaboom. This is what happened. COVID happened. COVID rampaged through India, which is where a lot of development was going on at WorkspaceONE. And they got to a point where they did not execute on their vision. So I talked to Scott Manchester about these quadrants a lot. He talks about, like, so basically you have an X and a Y quadrant. So one quadrant is about is what they get from talking to customers, and the other quadrant is about talking to the vendor and understanding their vision. And so what happened with WorkspaceONE at this time is they had announced shortly thereafter, they had announced some stuff. There was a little bit of stagnation there. So they weren't really delivering on certain products, right? So we had products like Freestyle Orchestrator, which was a huge fundamental product that just never ever got executed. All this stuff went down, whatever. But like, I know it's very hard to understand, like, oh, why is there this giant gap now? The reality is it's not about money or choice or any of that shit. What it's about is how many customers are on the goddamn thing. And does Gartner think that you're going in the right direction? And that's the real reality of it. And yeah, Intune's free if you have, most people, it's free for most people, right? Business Premium, M373 it's free for most people. But what this is just telling you is that most of them are on Intune. I'm going to tell you flat out, nobody's on Intune because they love Intune. They're on Intune because of the cost, period. Windows management is by far and away better on Intune than anything else. All the other stuff, it's debatable. Like, it's not even a conversation with Windows. I've done it on 3 or 4 different platforms. Windows, no question, just period. But like, that's the thing with the quadrant, right? Is that it's more about like how much is on there and how much they believe in it. Like I said, it's like a friend talking about your girlfriend. So at Ignite last year, when I ran the booth, I learned a few things. So like I said earlier, tons of people are moving to AVD. They all seem to be Citrix at this point. Who knows? I mean, we don't know at this point. I mean, one good thing is that imminently you're going to have Omnissa almost would bet money they're going to announce that they're going to be doing Horizon on Nutanix. So that'll be interesting to me to see if that moves the needle at all. I don't know if it will or it won't. I mean, maybe it would get Frame customers, but I don't know. Like I said, most of them come from Citrix. Windows 365 is picking up a ton of speed. The biggest problem that Windows 365 has is nobody wants to sell it because it doesn't make them any money because it's so friggin' easy. And we see this a lot. People talk about it a lot. Is that, and honestly, companies like Nerdio actually hurt the Windows 365 story because Nerdio makes it so easy to run and manage AVD. To do a lot of the automations, the orchestration and stuff. It just makes it so much easier that a lot of people are on the AVD side. But the problem is they're frustrated because a lot of the functionality that's inside of Windows 365 is only in Windows 365. But the thing that we learned over the last year really is that people don't want to manage architecture anymore. They just don't have an interest in it. I mean, yeah, I mean, SCCM and OSD and all this stuff is still really, really prevalent, but people don't want to manage the architectural and infrastructural stack anymore. I mean, and that's just, it's okay. Hey, that's really just not what you want to do. And like I said, it's infinitely important that people do actually build a competing product for Windows 365 cloud PCs, because eventually it will overtake most of it. And at the end of the day, right, I don't outwardly try to sell AVD to anybody who's on Citrix or Horizon in the cloud, because it's the same shit. You're doing FS Logic, you're doing app packaging, blah, blah, and gold images and yada, yada, yada. It's like, you're really not really saving yourself anything unless you're running away from a crazy renewal. But I mean, for the most part, I don't really push it on people too much because if what they're working with works for them and the cost is, livable, then okay. But obviously people are pairing it with Nerdio for good reason. And like I said, in closing on this particular site, it's license and go. That's what you want to do. So let's talk about Broadcom and Omnissa. So those of you who may or may not know, I had a let's call very loud departure from Omnissa, but that's fine. So I've watched over the last year some of the, let's call it cringy stuff that's gone on with the whole thing. What I can tell you from customers, verbatim, period, people are tired of hearing it's coming. They did a LinkedIn Live thing, they heard it's coming. They went to Omnissa One, they heard it's coming. I was at World of EUC, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. People are tired. I know of at least 5 or 6 companies of 50,000 plus seats, and that's outside of small businesses that I am aware of that are moving out of WorkspaceONE. Now, let me be very clear. Horizon is a great product. I do think that Horizon still has a good opportunity to be special and do great things, but they have to get with the program. WorkspaceONE already has lost the battle. Sorry to everybody. They friggin' lost the battle. You pissed people off and they left. They're not coming back. It's okay. Let's just understand that that's the deal. I mean, at the end of the day, right? And the whole thing is about lack of execution and getting away from what made them special. So the staple, those of you who aren't WorkspaceONE customers, the staple of what made AirWatch special was stuff like same-day support, integration partners, understanding what they were good at and staying in their lane and executing on it. And they don't do any of that now. Their same-day support, their day zero support of OSs turned into literally, oh, go implement this custom XML, which is never the way they did things. And I mean, it happens, right? And it's unfortunate, but I mean, like I said, it is what it is. I mean, I think most of us who worked in that world miss AirWatch, right? We miss what it meant, what it was, and how it delivered on what it promised. Now we have issues with support. We have, more than anything, I have customers screaming at me to get me off the platform because they broke DEP enrollments for 3 weeks and had poor ass communication. Like literally people were like pleading on the Omnissa community forums. No one was responding to them. And they weren't getting responses to tickets. Literally, people could not DEP enroll their devices. Anything that was any kind of enrollment that did not require the hub, literally was hosed. And I had a conversation with him about it yesterday. I said, you need to do some damage control. Because I mean, like I said, I want them to succeed, but I unfortunately it might be a little too late for that platform. And then we're also seeing a lot of, because of the whole Broadcom situation, we're seeing a lot of valuation. One of the big issues we see a lot is that people that are not in the top 2,000, the people who are in the top 2,000, Broadcom is basically saying, your partner can F off and you're coming with us. We have at least one client who said, no, we're gonna go do Nutanix versus, you're not taking your partner away from us. And then we have all kinds of, people are just getting crazy as shit, right? That you're looking at Proxmox and OpenShift and blah, blah, blah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, hopefully most of them stay with VMware. I don't buy the data that they're putting out there. I'm sure everyone's going to kick the tires, but I mean, at the end of the day, right, even if you go Nutanix because they're going to give you it free for a year, you still got to pay for Nutanix after the year, right? I mean, there's still stuff. I don't think that there's going to be as much shakeup in the hypervisor world as some people think they're going to be. I saw a poll yesterday where like 30% of people said they're moving to Hyper-V, which I thought was hilarious, but that's okay. I'm not going to have an opinion on Hyper-V. So if we talk about kind of trying to rethink old strategies for the future, CrowdStrike taught us a lot. I was like the main MVP, boots on the ground, like trying to help with that situation. But there's a couple of questions and things we should consider. So how much of a problem is vendor lock-in? Like, being completely locked into that. How much of is that an issue? It kind of is. I mean, because we all kind of said, oh, it's just CrowdStrike's fine. I mean, we dealt the same thing when US East 1 goes down in Amazon and a third of the internet falls on its face. I mean, vendor lock-in has always been an issue, but you're seeing a lot of companies I've worked at where they're like, they want like vendors, they want to buy everything and try to get as much cost savings as they can. And I mean, people don't seem to really care about it, but I think that it's more of an issue than I think that people think it is. Because I mean, you should have some kind of a good plan for like to try to recover from a disaster. I think more than anything, we learned with the CrowdStrike situation is, I know WSUS is like really super dead now, but we got to a point where we just started blanket approving everything, which is insane. And I think that we do need to re-emphasize testing patches and rings properly again. I mean, because not only do we have CrowdStrike, and then Microsoft broke, they blue screened people on their security patch the month after, and then 24H2 started blue screening people because of storage issues. There is all kinds of stuff going on. Like, and I think that we really do need to get back to testing patches, re-emphasizing rings, stuff like that. I know that I don't know if anyone's a login VSI customer, but I know that they're looking at stuff like that too to try to help with some of those types of scenarios, because like I think that that's really important. Is that we need to learn from an EUC perspective, like what we need to learn from, colossal fuck ups. CrowdStrike not just sucked, they hid it. So now we have to. Now you ask yourself the question: what else are they hiding? And that's the reality. They friggin' hid the fact that they don't do canary builds. It's insane. But I mean, we also learned that maybe hybrid and on-prem aren't so bad. Like I'm a big proponent of hybrid. So what? I love Kerberos, I love certs, blah blah blah. And it's like the people who were on hybrid and on-prem recovered a hell of a lot faster than cloud native people. Period. Like they had the tools and the abilities and the stuff that they could. Also, Windows 365 customers also recovered really well and easy because they could just do a restore themselves, self-service. I mean, I think this is the reality, right? Is that do what's right for you and what you need to get comfortable and to give yourself a proper like DR strategy. Like, what does any of this really mean anymore at all? So now we're going to just quickly move into the future, what the future EUC looks like. So is AI the real future? So everyone is banking on it, right? It is if anyone's ever seen the Chris Rock hit, they think it's the Robitussin of technology. It's like, oh, I have a problem. AI. I have this problem. AI. People are quitting. AI. AI blocks. AI training. AI. It's friggin' ridiculous. There are literal legitimate use cases for AI that actually have value. Like summarization. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big supporter of Copilot, but I do like some of the summarization stuff that Copilot does do. Like I tried using Copilot to build PowerPoint slides. I practically flipped my computer over the wall. It was so bad. There are like some things that help, right? Like it does help with like sometimes in some of the Outlook stuff, but like for the most part, like I said, I don't find it to be that useful. But like summarization is really helpful. Dictation, again, really, really useful. I find it to be a good code assistant just for working out logic because, like I said, I can write the code itself, but sometimes like logic and reason stuff is a little. I just don't. My head is not always in it where I need it to be. So I use it for that kind of stuff. And also creativity, like if you want it to help you like building graphics and stuff like that. I will say that Copilot has made my slide decks way faster and way easier because I don't have to like comb through trying to find the right graphic because it does make a lot of that stuff like relatively easier. I mean, it's nice, but it's really not half as good as people claim that it is. I mean, it has really good use cases. Ryan, it works sometimes. Like the only thing that ever did good for me is I told it to basically fix the font for all my slides because there was inconsistent stuff. But yes, like some stuff just does not work the way I would want it to. I do like some of the personalization and theme stuff, which I think was actually pre-Copilot. But yeah, I haven't had the best luck with it. I think I mainly like the Outlook Copilot stuff, I would say. But I mean, I still kind of like ChatGPT better as just like a straight like agent. But I mean, we've already seen a lot of this. We've seen stuff where like law firms have gotten in trouble for using ChatGPT. You're going to see this in the FDA, I guarantee you. There's a lot of problematic stuff. There's also the what do you call it? I forget what it's called. The thing that you can use to join your Zoom meetings and stuff like that, which is kind of amusing. And then someone screwed up with that recently. But like there's some really good use cases like automated captioning. The summarization in Teams for meetings is really cool too. Like there is some stuff. Like so every single year, every single time you go to any friggin' session, you hear the year of VDI. Like. And Brian Madden swears the 2025 is the year of VDI, but he's sworn that for 10 years. But like, I don't really see I don't think it's the year of VDI, but like, I think that, so Gartner kind of stole something I did a couple of years ago, and they released this thing last year called Autonomous Endpoint Management. I literally wrote something that predated this by 2 years, which I kind of talked about like what the direction that endpoint management is going in. So I think that there's a lot of high potential growth between now and 2030. I mean, the reality is, and sorry for SCCM people, is if SCCM is here in 5 years, I'll die of shock. They officially finally murdered WSUS. SCCM's coming. I'm sorry. They're coming for you. They don't care. They don't want to be on-prem. They want everybody cloud native. I literally was in a meeting where they said they don't want any more SCCM MVPs. So yeah, it's coming. So there are some questions I think that we have to ask ourselves over the next couple of years. Like, are enterprise browsers an actual legitimate thing, or are they just a money grab, right? Like we saw with like certain vendors in the InfoSec space. Can Anessa like make a comeback? I mean, I think that's a real legitimate question, because I mean, one of the biggest legitimate questions for me right now, and this is what people are talking about, and we talked about this yesterday. Ninja One, which was the top RMM on the market, just released an MDM, and they apparently just signed multiple deals of 50,000 devices plus. So they're somebody I'm watching right now in the endpoint space. But like, yeah, I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, DAS, I think, is also going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. You know, what is actually going to happen with it? Where are we going with it? What do people actually want? I think we're going to keep seeing, you know, I think some really good evolution there. But we do need some competition. No, Gerard, no. And then Dex becoming somewhat sentient, where it actually will automatically do your automations, I think is something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on and see what they continue to do there and how they continue to grow that out, which is see, I have a lot of feelings about the Linux desktop. We actually manage a Linux environment for some customers in WorkspaceONE, which is the only solution that's even remotely usable for Linux. And I get poo-pooed about this all the time, but I would love to see somebody actually build a proper MDM for Linux, because most companies that are doing big Linux, they're like doing like a Chef Ansible kind of thing, and it's a custom homegrown solution. It's not. I mean, that's what Uber does. Like, it's just not great. I would love somebody to actually care enough. Microsoft will obviously never do it. I would love for us to see somebody actually build an Ubuntu, because I do believe that it would have impact if someone built an actual legitimate G8, an actual Linux management platform. I mean, it's really hard, but I mean, that's the thing I would just like to see as a technologist. And no, I don't think AI is going to live up to the potential at all. So this is what my future EUC is. This is what I see. So I have 5 predictions. I do believe, without doubt, that Citrix and Omnissa are not that stupid. I wonder sometimes, but I believe that they have to be smarter, and they should know and realize that Windows 365 is here. It's proven. You've got companies like Lego that are running like 50, 60,000 of them, and pharma companies, and a lot of people are using it now. It's so impactful that people are critical of Nerdio, because Nerdio is getting people to do AV instead of it. Like, it's such an impactful technology that I think that everyone needs to understand that it's valuable. Because I mean, so Horizon V2 Titan, one of its things was, we have Horizon Edges. They're 90% cheaper. They need the 10%. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, if you want people to stick around and pay your VTax, give them a reason to. I don't think enterprise browsers are going to replace the damn thing. I like them, they're nice, but I think that there's going to be very specific use cases. Like, for example, anything that needs recording or compliance, I think it's going to settle into being a really good compliance tool. Like, I can see call centers, I can see international, like I see specific use cases. I've been to meetings where they said it's going to replace VDI, or it's going to replace MDM, and it's just laughable. I get told like to not say anything, but like, yeah, no. I do think Dex is going to get more affordable. I'm going to die trying. I'm pushing like hell to get that cost a little bit lower. They did just sign a partnership where if you're a Nerdio customer, ControlUp will actually give you like 40% off the top of your ControlUp licenses. As an aside, they just signed a big partnership when I spoke at EVD Tech Fest a few weeks ago. I do think Cloud PKI mostly, and some EPM is going to start picking up steam, because I think that you're going to start seeing budgets next year that are going to be more focused on ransomware, APTs. Not that they're not already, but there's going to be more. I think there's going to continue to be more and more of a focus of it. I think Cloud PKI is going to be incredibly important, and I think that it's more about people need to get the word out there and get people to understand why it's good, because that's the reality. It is really good. Like, I've seen crazy ass shit over the last couple of years. I've seen people buy like a single certificate from like whoever, like Komodo, and you put that on like 5,000 Zebra tablets. Like I've literally seen stuff like this. Like it's just not the way you do things. And Brian Madden amazingly actually agreed with me in this. I think that AI is going to get quieter, and we're not going to talk about it anymore within 2 years. I think it's just going to be underneath everything. So it's no longer going to be really the thing to talk about at all. I do not like Let's Encrypt, not one bit. I said I like Skepman is phenomenal. Like it's like you pay like it's like buying a managed engine product. It's like five to 10K a year. You get a ton of value. It's really easy to run. Like a lot of people use it. I was the first person to do Skepman with that WorkspaceONE. Like I said, it works with anything. It's built on Skep. You can even do servers with it now, and it's like I said, phenomenal product. So the last thing I wanted to kind of talk about was kind of just some skills that will benefit people kind of moving forward as we kind of go. Because that's what I care about. Like, whatever tech does. What I care about are the people, the boots on the ground, the people that are actually doing things and how to support them and make their lives better. And so for me, I focus a lot on like what kind of skills kind of future-proof you, because I don't want to see people in the endpoint management, the VI side, go the way of middleware people. Where when DevOps hit, all the middleware people, the people who are managing Tomcat servers and stuff kind of started dissipating if they couldn't hack it. So like scripting skills, super important. Like learn one, probably not Python because friggin' Intune doesn't support Python, but learn PowerShell if you're doing Windows. Learn Bash if you're doing Macs. It matters. Just learn the basics. SSL, Kerberos, certs, super important. I'm probably doing a webinar on this soon. I actually taught. I used to do a regular lunch and learn at Talbot's on this, on just teaching people the basics of OpenSSL, of looking at like a packet capture, of like a SSL handshake, that kind of stuff. Like these are things that will never ever expire. If you can do those three things, you'll have a job for the next 25 years because nobody can do it. And everyone's terrified of it. Again, use tools. Know how to use Wireshark, Fiddler. All understand the different tools that exist in the platforms that you manage. Like if you do Intune, there's like a bajillion products that people have built, like to look at like all kinds of stuff. Just understanding the different tools that are available and accessible out there. And learn APIs. That's the first thing I teach anybody that new into IT is I teach them the APIs. If you understand how the data is structured, you understand how it works, things just get easier for you. Because if you understand how to work within it, and you kind of get it, because every single thing that like you hit in your admin console that you're in is API backed. You can pretty much do anything via APIs. The APIs might suck, like people who are remaining nameless, but if you just figure out how to make them suck a little bit less, and life becomes a lot easier. So I'm gonna give people the opportunity here. I'm gonna unmute if anybody. I'm unmuting, so if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to discuss, hit me. Let's go. You're not gonna no one's gonna beat me up? Come on. You can unmute yourself. It's not about not liking Let's Encrypt. I just don't think it's scalable, in my opinion. Like, I mean, Let's Encrypt, right? They've done a lot of the great work in the PKI space, without question. Like I said, Skepman is so inexpensive and so easy to run. Like I said, I can roll that thing out in like 2 to 4 hours, and it just works really well. It's it's all based on Skep. It doesn't cost much. Like I said, Let's Encrypt has just never been something. I said I think it's a nice platform. It's just not something I would use at a customer level. It's something I would use I would use it in like in like a lab or something, but it's not something I would use that I would ever try to, really truly roll out. Because I mean, there's always going to be some gaps. I haven't used it in a long time, but I mean, there's always gaps with it. Yeah, I have a blog too on how to set up Skepman. It's super, super easy. Like you literally just deploy the thing. There's like a config file you set up, and it's like nothing. So Netflix came out 2007. So literally what would happen is, BlackBerry's issue back to the old BlackBerries is that they never had great support in their ecosystem, their app store. That's how Apple actually took over, is that Apple had consumerization. They had an app site, all that stuff. And once the Netflix app came out, which I want to say was like 2008, 2009, that was literally everyone was asking for it. Like I worked in Premiere support, like DISA had literally 1,000 beds, like 1,000 servers, 1,000. That's how big their environment was. I would literally get like leadership on just in the middle of like a support call saying, when you're getting the Netflix app. And so it was big, like a whole thing for like a year. And then that was like literally that was like the app that was really a jumping off point. Like I know that at that point the iPhone had been around for a couple of years, but like Netflix was like that like culture thing that really started everything. And that was like the thing that I look at as a climactic point that made people start actually, saying, okay, maybe the iPhone, it can be a business device, and like, can we consumerize it? And then the APIs, and it kind of went from there. You talk about reporting for patching, Mohammed? So the one thing that people don't most there's two things people mostly don't realize with Intune and patching. One is if you have Windows 10 E3 licenses, you get auto patch, which is like basically like Windows Update for Business, but it's fully automated. They manage all the rings for you. The more important thing is, and the reason that Intune people don't know this is because their companies suck and they don't give Intune people access to like anything. Inside of Azure, and if you go into Azure and you go monitor, there's actually a Windows Update for Business workbook that you can basically spin up in there, and it pulls data out of Log Analytics Workspace, and it gives you full reports almost as good as you get with SCCM. So a lot of people actually aren't aware of that, and like I said, it's because that they don't give them access, and that's really the main. Because I get that question a lot. I'm just grabbing my blog article. I'll give it to you. I talk about that a little bit, but yeah, it's actually real. They actually do a really nice job with that. But yeah, that's the number one question I usually get from SCCM people, is that the patching stuff, the patching reporting is terrible. But yeah, like you go, it's like you go to portal.azure, you go to monitor, and you go to the workbook, and the workbook's actually really solid. Like, is it as good? No, but it's pretty close. Anything else? I'm here for you guys, however long you need me. John, you're not coming off mute and say hi? The wonderful John Bakud. Thank you, Shad.
Thank you.
Hey, John, on
Hey, John.
API scripting, would you recommend a tool? Like, so I've posted
I hate Postman. I absolutely hate Postman, but it does make it easier. I do everything in PowerShell. Like I don't like Intune has like an MG graph and stuff and all that. I just like doing it in PowerShell. Like I know exactly what I'm gonna get. But Postman is probably the easiest thing to use. When you write the code itself, Visual Studio Code is the best thing to do. Don't do what I do, and I use ISE, and I get a lot of crap for it because I've just always used ISE. But like,
I'm old school like you two.
yeah, VS Code is really, really good. They have a PowerShell like module in there, and that has always worked out that pretty good. With the APIs, like I literally will just I'll just start doing gets and looking at the data and seeing like what's inside of it and like trying to figure out stuff. So there's an amazing guy who works at Omnissa with a good friend of mine named Chris Halstead, and I went to a session, I know it was like 4 or 5 years ago, and he basically wrote an API tool, and he showed us this API tool for doing like random stuff. I forget what it was, like adding people to smart groups and stuff. And that got me really interested. And I was like, oh, why am I afraid of APIs? And so I built so many tools over the years to solve problems that VMware called unsupported. Like I have an API tool, for example, that can migrate users between devices. Yeah, the other recording will be on my YouTube channel.
Well, that's the thing. So I've actually posted on the Omnissa site, the VMware, the Horizon Cloud support for any kind of scripting or PowerShell is horrific.
Do they not have
And
an API in the Horizon Cloud
there
doesn't have an API at all?
there
Or
is
no?
an API, but the documentation is horrible, and it doesn't
Yeah, it
cover
really
everything.
is.
Like I have to publish like 50 manual apps for BNC connections.
Oh
So
wow.
instead of clicking through them
Yeah.
and 50 checkboxes and whatnot for each app, I'm like, well, I'll just script it. And I spent a couple of days playing with that. It would have been faster, but there is no way, scripty
Yep.
way,
I can
to
hook you up.
add an app.
Why don't I hook you up with Jeff Olatowski? Dan,
Sure,
you're the person I ran into at Ignite last year, right?
that's right,
Are you going to be at Ignite this year?
100%.
Yeah. So Jeff will be there. So
Okay.
why don't I get you guys hooked up? Because so Jeff owns he's the PM for App Volumes. So he might
Okay.
be able to, he might be a good person to try to, he's a really, really great guy. He used to be the PM at Cloud Volumes before they got bought by VMware.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
If you
so
look at the Omnissa Cloud Forum or Horizon Cloud Forum, like I'm the only one posting in there. Like I don't know
really,
how many
well,
other people are
yeah.
using Horizon Cloud, but
Oh really? Yeah, I
yeah.
love Titan. I love the fact in Titan, like in V2, how you could you'd click the button, the App Volumes button, it would automatically spin up a VM in Azure. And then
Yeah.
you do your thing and then it would tear it down. Like that's like, and I was telling Jeff this, like that's exactly what you always wanted App Volumes to be. Like that is like the exact experience. I actually worked on the Windows 365 App Volumes integration, which is interesting, kind of. It was like basically you build an App Volumes VM inside of Azure, and then it connects to AVD or Windows 365. Because yeah, there's literally 3 vendors I know of right now that are making announcements at Intune at Ignite to basically do essentially app packaging for Windows 365 and AVD because Intune problems.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Sean. Well, hope to catch up with you in
Yeah, well,
Chicago.
I'll see you. Yeah, I'll see you next month. Chocolatey is good. I never really got into it, but I know a lot of people really like it. I know a lot of people on the Intune side do a lot of chocolaties. Yes, I just don't understand why people name products certain things. Like we spent 10 years making fun of good. You would think that they would get it by now, but not so much. That's okay. Anybody have anything else?
Hey, Jonathan.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for this. Would you mind?
I'm sorry. I lost you.
Sorry, am I muted now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Would you mind posting a link to the Skepman blog that you mentioned earlier
Oh
in the
yeah,
chat?
yeah. Give me a second.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I presented it at VMware Explorer, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. I did a whole thing on how like a small business can operate as an enterprise. And so it's kind of neat because I talked about kind of just like like doing start-based auth and like a lot of that kind of stuff. Sure. I'm just gonna make sure that he just talks about how Skepman works basically, and then it has a video demo on deploying Skepman to Azure and setting it up at WorkspaceONE specifically. Yeah, so it has all the videos in there. It works out pretty nicely, and they're really nice and really like good to work with. The people, they're like let's say they're Dutch. They got a really weird, I can't even pronounce it. It's like Glukic something or other. Anybody have anything else? Yeah, but just for context, Skepman is 500 euros a month for 1,000 users. So like it's a very, very good, very well priced. Yeah, I'll hang around for a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, thank you everybody for for stopping by. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you need anything. Always around, even though I'm not working in the VMware side anymore, people do still come to me with issues and stuff. And if I can help, I always will. My pleasure.
John, are you going to post this video?
Yeah,
somewhere
as soon as once it finishes, yeah, I'm just gonna make sure it's tidied up and then I'm gonna upload it up to my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. For those who don't have access, but it's an easy Google. Great. Thank you, everybody. Take care.